So this year, when I was doing my crypto taxes, I unfortunately spent a week of my time trying to figure out how much I owed Canada's Revenue Agency. In that process, I learned three pieces of advice that I wish I could go back in time and give myself. I can't do that, so I'm going to give that to you instead. And these are the things that I'm going to follow myself moving forward. Point one is to never use your investment tokens when you are playing in the primary markets or investing in the primary markets. What do I mean by this? If you are a long-time investor in Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana, and you've been dollar cost averaging into it for 5, 10, 15 years, do not use those tokens to swap them for other tokens on the primary markets. Every time you swap your tokens, the taxman considers that to be a disposition. Even though you're not making any money by swapping the token, the government considers that to be you selling the token, getting cash, and then buying a new token with that cash. Which means that if you bought Bitcoin at a low price, say $20,000 or $5, and then you swap it for something else, Dogecoin, on Uniswap, while Bitcoin's price is now $80,000, the government will see that as you making a 4x return and then will charge you for that. They'll consider that a capital gain, which is very annoying. You don't have the option of telling the government that you were actually using the tokens that you bought last week rather than last decade. They don't see it that way. The way that they see things is they look at all of the tokens that you have, and then they calculate the average price that you paid to buy that entire pool. And the difference between the amount that your token is worth on the day that you sell it for and that average cost is the capital gains that you pay for that token, for that swap, which is very annoying. I have been dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and crypto. Into Bitcoin and Ethereum, which means that when I am trying to invest in the primary markets, I should not be using Bitcoin and Ethereum to swap tokens. What I will do moving forward instead is to use USDC, a stable coin, to swap with other tokens, because there are going to be negligible amounts of capital gains on USDC when I'm selling it. That's point number one. Point number two is to keep track of all of the wallets that you use during the year. When I was calculating my taxes, I used a service called Koinly to calculate how much I owed. You type in the wallets that you used, their addresses, and it'll automatically calculate how much you bought and sold things for. But when I did that, there was a problem. There were a whole bunch of capital gains on these trades that I didn't recognize as being trades at all. So I looked into it, and it turns out that those were just transfers from a wallet in Koinly to a wallet that Koinly did not recognize. And that's what's happening. The way it works is, if Koinly doesn't recognize the wallet that you are sending money to, it automatically assumes that you are selling that token and making money from it. You're just not disclosing that to them. But that comes at a cost, which is the capital gains associated with selling that token. So the way you solve this is by adding in all of the wallet addresses that you used during the year. But that is problematic if it has been 11 months or 13 months since you last used that wallet and you don't even remember which wallets you were using. when this happened to me, I had to go through my browsing history. I had to go onto Etherscan, and all of that I uploaded to Google and to ChatGPT to try and figure out what companies these wallets belong to, because I didn't remember. And I fortunately figured it out, but it was annoying at the time looking for those wallets. If I had just written down all of the wallets that I was using when I used them, I would have saved myself a lot of headache, because I would know exactly which wallets and their addresses I needed to upload to Koinly, so that they could keep track of my capital gains and lack thereof. That's the second point of advice that I would give myself. The final point of advice that I would give myself is to keep track of where I'm sending my money to and what I expect to get from it. Otherwise, you'll feel like a squirrel. What do I mean by that? Squirrels will look for nuts during the summer and the fall. They'll then find a place in the ground to bury it, or they'll save it in a tree, or they'll save it in a lamppost somewhere. The problem is that all of these squirrels may forget, and do forget, where they keep all of their nuts. So when winter comes, they will have enough to eat because they keep finding their old hashes, but they don't find all of their hashes. And if that hash does not have a lot of money in it, a lot of nuts in it, then it might not be as important to them, even though they may be experimenting with a particular hash. So applied to crypto, what does this mean? This means that if you are trying out a bunch of different investments and you want to see what the rate of return is, but you're not spending, or you're not investing more than you would be willing to lose, then you might just lose, quote unquote, lose that money because you forgot where you kept it. You forgot it was in some protocol, you forgot it was in some wallet, you forgot it was whatever. As a result, you end up losing a couple $100 here and there, which is very annoying. But if you had kept track of where you were putting your money to work, that would be far less likely to happen. It's also helpful to write down what your expectations of return were, because unfortunately, crypto websites and protocols tend to change their APYs and APRs on a daily basis, which means that you cannot trust the money that you cannot trust the platforms. You're not like banks where you put your money in for a year and then out comes X plus 2.5% of X. The interest rate on these different protocols change. And so it's good to know if it was worthwhile to invest in a protocol based on what you expected them to pay and what they actually paid, as opposed to just going with the flow and trusting the site. You should trust, but verify. And I think that's the third point of advice that I would give myself if I could go back in time. I'm going to be using these three things moving forward. One is to use stablecoins when you are investing in the primary markets. Two is to keep track of all of the wallets that you use during the year. And three is to keep track of all of the places that you are investing and your expected rate of return for each of those places, so that you don't lose your money. If there are any other tips that you have personally found helpful, or that you have learned through the slings and arrows of going through taxes, please leave a comment sharing that with other people, so that I and others can learn from your wisdom too. And if not, thank you for watching. Take care.